Nove Miesto, winter, 1941 to 1942. Now there were only 2 children. No parents. George put an arm around his 10-year-old sister and promised to take care of her. Boschka, the housekeeper, tried to distract them with special treats and light-hearted talk. It didn't work. The children were sad, and they were very scared. Hours after their father's arrest, there was another knock at the door. Hana's heart pounded. George swallowed hard. Who have they come for now? But when the children opened the door, they found Uncle Ludwig, their beloved Uncle Ludwig.
"I've just heard the bad news,"
he said, hugging Hana with one arm, George with the other.
"You are both coming with me. You belong with family, with people who love you."
Uncle Ludwig was a Christian who had married Father's sister. Because he wasn't Jewish, he was not an obvious target for the Nazis. But he was a brave man to take in George and Hana. The Gestapo had warned that terrible harm could come to anyone who helped the Jews. Uncle Ludwig told the children to gather up their most treasured things. Hana took her life-size doll named Nana that she had had since she was 5. George put together all the family photographs. Each of them filled a suitcase with clothes. Hana chose a large brown suitcase that she had taken before on family trips. She loved the polka dot lining. When everything was packed, they turned out the light and closed the door behind them. That night, her aunt and uncle tucked Hana into a big bed with a feather-filled comforter.
"We will care for you until your parents come back, Hana,"
they promised.
"And we'll be just down the hall if you wake up in the night."
But long after lights out, Hana lay awake, blinking into the unfamiliar darkness. It was a strange bed. And the world, now full of danger, seemed to have turned upside down. What will come next? Hana wondered with fear. Finally, she closed her eyes and fell asleep. Hana awoke the next morning to urgent barking outside her window. She was frightened. What could be wrong? Then she recognized the sounds. It was Silva, their loyal wolfhound. She had found her way across town to be with Hana and George. At least some friends, Hana thought, stay true. It was a small comfort. Aunt Hedda and Uncle Ludwig's house was small but comfortable, with a pretty little garden in the back. It was very close to the neighborhood school, and every day George and Hana watched the other children with their book bags, laughing, playing, on their way to their classes. "I want to go too!" Hana stamped her foot in hurt and frustration, but there was nothing anyone could do. In the months that followed, Uncle Ludwig and Aunt Hedda did their best to keep the children busy. George chopped wood for hours on end. Hana read books and played games. She was well liked by her cousins, Vera and Jerzy. Sometimes she even went to church with them. And every day at lunchtime, Hana and George went back to their old home to eat a familiar meal with their housekeeper Boschka, who pampered them, hugged and kissed them, and reminded them that she had promised their parents that she would keep them healthy by feeding them well. Every few weeks, a letter would arrive from Father, who was imprisoned in the Iglau Gestapo prison. George would read only the cheerful part to his sister. George thought Hana was too young to know the whole truth about the harsh conditions in prison and how desperate Father was to be free. She was not too young, though, to be deported by the Nazis.